Enough to knock me out, but I'm still holding the throne. You never know till it's over. So pretty it hurts. Just beware of the thorns.
Hello YouTube. Well, I want to continue in the order I was going from different prisons, one from another. But before I do, subscribe, hit that like, comment, share. I like your comments and I always try to answer them. Let's get into this. As I told you in the last video, a bunch of us got our levels raised to level 5 just so they can fill South Central Correctional Center with 5s. That's in Licking, Missouri. It held like a little over 1,500 inmates. So I get there, and here's how it's set up. You have the prison that has 6 housing units. Outside of the prison, but connected to it, is work release. There's people about ready to go home. There's 6 housing units. One of them's next to medical, and it's single man cells. It's for long-term ADSED, administrative segregation. Then they have 2 houses, which used to be totally all the whole, but I guess they felt they needed a PC there, so they made half of the whole PC, made them a little yard out there by the housing unit, pull-up bars and stuff, 3 house used to be a transition from the whole, like if you got out of 2 house, you'd go to 3 house, didn't have no canteen or nothing, and then you moved on down to 4, 5, or 6 house. That changed. It became the honor house. And I'll talk more about that later. 4 house was an education house. They tried to make it an education house, but I guess there's just so many people in education it couldn't hold them all. 5 and 6 house that's where all the fights and stabbings and stuff took place, all the wild people were at. So anyway, and there was some up at the other end too, but like in 3 house and 4 house, but most of them was in 5 and 6 house. I was only in 5 house. I wanted to go to 6 house a couple of times, but never got the opportunity. But I did end up in 3 house, and I'll talk about that later. Anyway, somebody asked, do you have to have a job in prison? It used to not be like that in Missouri, but now they make you do, at least in the high level prisons, they make you do 90 days in food service, and then you have to have a job. You can keep working in food service or you can go somewhere else, but you have to have a job unless you're disabled, have a medical lay-in, or there's some reason you can't work. The next, so I worked in food service for a little over a year, and no, a little over, past my 90 days. Then I got into the food service warehouse, which was good. I mean, there's a lot of perks to it. We got off early. We had to go to work early. Like at food service, went to work at 3 a.m. We had to go, pretty early too. Not quite as early as 3 a.m., but still pretty early. But the bread truck would always bring us donuts, and milk truck would always bring us chocolate milk. Just little perks of working back there. And, it was nice back then. Plus, we ate what we wanted back there. But we was taking out a lot of ground beef. That was back there when they actually served the ground beef and the beef tips and stuff. And the 5 of us that worked back there was taking out a lot. We was making a killing with it. Packs, stamps, canteen. And people wanted it, They put it in a crock pot and cook it up. And one day, we came out into the kitchen, and I had my shirt, my outer shirt, gray shirt on. I'd taken it off after we got searched. I just didn't put it back on. Anyway, we're out in the dining hall area, and me and another guy were sitting there, and we get called for something. I can't remember what it was, but we go back into the kitchen area, and while we's gone, somebody puts a piece of ground beef in my shirt, and I guess goes tells on me. Anyway, they did that so they can get my job. It wasn't none of the people that worked back there, but they did that because somebody wanted my job. It wasn't even 8 ounces, and every day, me and these other guys were taking out way more than 8 ounces. Like it'd be a 10-pound stick, and we'd take it all. We between the 5 of us, we'd take it all out. And this happened regularly. But so I'm just gonna be honest. I wouldn't take anything like 8 ounces out. I ain't gonna take a risk getting caught with a small amount. So I went to the hole for that, and when I get out, all the other people that had worked with me had got kicked out. They now worked in recreation. It's like I was told that they thought something was going on back there, so they took them, but they couldn't prove it, so they took them and put them in recreation. Took 5 recreation workers and put them in the food service warehouse. Well, I talked to those guys, and they got me a job in recreation. The guys I used to work with in the warehouse, they got me a job in the recreation, and I worked there until I left. Even after going to the hole, I'd go to the hole, get right back out, and this really wasn't fair to other people who was trying to get into the gym. But my boss would always just hire me back, and did others the same way. If you was a good recreation worker, he wanted to keep you. If you wasn't a good recreation worker and you went to the hole, he wouldn't try getting you back. So the second question was, did you ever break any prison rules? Of course I did. Throughout my whole bit. I mean, I can't even name them all. But there was fights, there was out of bounds, there was all kinds of things, Just broke one rule after another. And one of the rules I broke is when I worked in recreation. And I didn't care, though. If I'm helping out somebody else, I don't care. So not everybody was allowed on the yard at the same time, and not everybody had gym at the same time. There was 2 yards and 2 housing units out, but only one of the housing units had the gym in the yard. So, and they'd holler through fences at one another and stuff. That's what we did. But rec workers could go anywhere on the yard, and they was at the gym all day long with every housing unit. So people would come up to me and say, "Hey, I owe this guy a bag of coffee. Can you get it to me? He has rec this afternoon." And I'd said, "Sure." And they usually kicked me down something. If it was somebody I was real cool with, I wouldn't charge them, But if it was somebody I didn't know from Adam, yeah, what's in it for me? But so that passing and all that was against the rules, especially from housing unit to housing unit. Even though some guards would overlook it if they saw it happening, it was still against the prison rules, Was I ever involved in a riot? Well, no, not really a riot. It was more like a food strike, and this happened at South Central Correctional Center too. Um, when we first got there, we couldn't hardly have anything. We couldn't have sunglasses and none of that. None of the stuff we had in other prisons. It was just crazy. How we, I don't know why we had tolerated that, but for some reason we did. And but then they started saying the only time you can wear your personal clothes is in your cell. You know, just stupid stuff. So we all went on a food strike. And to be honest, I didn't think it was going to work. And by a food strike, I mean nobody goes to chow hall, nobody goes to work. Food service workers don't go to work. Well, they got some volunteers out of the whole prison to find volunteer for food service, but it didn't matter. The few people they found, there was nobody going to chow anyway. And I remember when they popped the doors for chow the first day, this old man started to come out to go to chow, and my neighbor, guy next to me, he said, "Hey, don't go to chow." He said, "I'll feed you." He says, "I'll feed you as long as this thing lasts. You know, go back in your cell." The guy did, and the guy kicked him over some food. I mean, we understand that people are hungry and get hungry and may not have anything, so we's helping people out. You know, I helped a couple people out. You know, anyway, this I'm surprised that everybody stuck together as long as they did on this, because I was expecting nobody to go through with it, and just about everybody did. And we got our demands met. You know, we could wear our personals back out of the cell again, out in the yard. You know, what's the use to having personals if you can only have them in your cell? And eventually, over the 12 years I was there, they started giving back like sunglasses and different things, you know, that they had taken from us. And let's see, what was the next one? What was the dumbest thing I ever saw in prison? Well, I saw a lot of dumb stuff. And it's not just necessarily from the prisoners, although most of it was. Some of it was from um, staff too, you know. But the one that happened at Licking, I don't understand what this guy was doing. Maybe he was off mentally, you know. Maybe he was trying to act like he was off mentally. Maybe he had a plan, but he had to know that this wasn't going to work. Now, I told you about the housing units. Well, in between each housing unit there's a fence. Past that fence, you go a little ways, and then there's 3 fences. I think it's 3, 2 or 3, but they're electrified. And this guy takes off running one day between the housing units and starts climbing this fence. And gets up there and starts getting stuck, you know, with the wire and stuff. But this guard comes up there and pulls him down. And, you know, everybody was cheering him on, and I wasn't. I was just looking at him like, what are you doing? You know, if he'd made it over that fence, where was he going to go? He wasn't going to go over the fence that you know, kept us all in. It was, you know, there's an electric fence. What is the dumbest conduct violation I ever got? I got several over the years that I considered dumb. Some of them got thrown out, meaning I was found innocent. But the one that really irked me is I had this double cassette Panasonic stereo. Now, when you order these, when you buy these off the canteen, they get them in and they take the mics out of them. I told the story before. Because some staff had been recorded and got in trouble, you know, saying things they weren't supposed to say. They have got to take the one out of mine. And so people were making these homemade mics out of the earbuds. Well, they started going around checking, and they found out I had a mic in my stereo, and they put me in the hole for it. I was in the hole 4 months on an investigation. Well, they listened to all my cassette tapes. For those of you who don't know what cassette tapes are, they came out before CDs. I'm being funny. Anyway, I was in the hole for 4 months over something they forgot to do, neglected to do. And they kept telling me, "Where'd you get the mic? Where'd you get the mic?" I said, "You know what? I went to Radio Shack and got it. That's where I got it at. Are you stupid?" You know, I told them this. But it wasn't that they were stupid or anything. They knew that they had forgotten to take it out, had overlooked it or something, and they was just trying to cover their asses. It was plain and simple. I don't care what they say, you know. They always do that. When they're in the wrong, they'll try to put the blame on the inmate. Have I ever seen people murdered in prison? Of course I have. And not necessarily always by convicts either. It's been by staff too. If there's anybody who's a correctional officer, feel free to comment, because I stand by what I'll say. But the last one I saw was in South Central Correctional Center, and this guy, young guy, had come in, and I think he came in from another prison. But these group of white guys was trying to, you know, goad him into doing things. You know, if you to be part of us, you have to beat up this guy. It's a wannabe gang, is what it was. A bunch of punks, if you ask me. But anyway, they talked this guy up into beating this child molester up that was on the yard. Why he was on the yard, I don't know. And like I said, I can't stand him being on the yard, and I didn't even know he was one, or I might have done something myself. But I definitely wouldn't have done what this guy did. This guy catches him in the gym and starts beating him. Well, there's a wall about waist high that separates the basketball court from the weight area where people were working out. And those of us who were working out was always having to dodge basketballs and stuff. But anyway, he starts beating this guy, and he starts to, you know, he just does a little bit. But when he hits this guy falls down and hits his head on that wall. And he beats him a little bit, and he starts to walk away. Well, he sees that no staff had seen him, because they're at the front of the gym. They had these big doors, and they had them open. They were sitting there in chairs, and they was watching the softball game. So he comes back and beats him some more. Well, he ends up killing the guy. So here's a guy who only had a few years left, was still young, and now he has a murder. You know, he got a murder charge, and he got convicted of that, of course. But that's the last murder I've seen. But I'm telling this for those of you who, God forbid, may be going to prison. Don't let anybody soup you up, goad you into doing anything to be part of this or that. You don't have to do that. Not in Missouri. You don't have to join a gang in Missouri. These other states like California and other places, yeah, you have to join a gang. You know, you have to side with your own, from my understanding. But in Missouri, you don't have to. Now, I ain't putting down the gangs in Missouri. I had some gang members that were my friends and tried to get me to join. I ain't gonna mention the gangs, but I didn't want any part of it. And a couple of them, when I ended up going to a lower level, was from my hometown. Still didn't want any part of it. You don't have to join a gang. Has anyone ever overdosed in prison? Yeah, they have. I mean, there's all kinds of drugs in prison. Um, Pretty much whatever you want. And I have seen overdoses. But I want to tell you about this. Man, this guy had heart. I don't know how he did it. This guy was a drug addict. He was in my cellie for a while. And always going to the dope man, getting heroin and other things, mostly heroin. But one day he tells me he wants to get off of that. He says, I'm done with it. And he goes, I don't want you to call the guards. No matter what happens, I don't want you to call the guards. I don't want you medical or anything like that. Just let me be. So I did, and it wasn't long that he was curled up in a fetal position, like the next day or so. And he was just like shaking, And whenever they'd count, he'd get up. I'd help him up, and he'd lean his head on the bed like he was tired, but he was like pale and sweating at times, So after about the fourth day, third or fourth day, I can't remember, I started getting concerned he was going to die on me. So I went out in the wing and I talked to some guys that, that did drugs and stuff. And I said, I'm kind of worried about this guy. So they come over and they looked at him. They said, oh man, he's just fighting his own demons, man. Just let him be, let him fight through this thing. So I did. And then one morning, I got up, and he's laying there kind of in a fetal position, but he wasn't moving. He wasn't like making sounds or stuff like he had been. And so I lit a cigarette, made some coffee, and I'm looking at him. I'm thinking, did he die on me? That's just great, I got to watching TV, and I hear this, hey, Harvey, can I get a cigarette? And I looked over, and he was just looking at me. And so I get him a cigarette and I hand it to him. And he goes, thanks, man. I said, that's no problem, I don't mind giving you a cigarette. He goes, no, I got cigarettes. I just didn't feel like getting up and getting them. He goes, I was thanking you for, not saying anything to the guards or anything. I said, man, you had me worried there for a couple of days. He goes, this stuff ain't going to kill me. He says, withdrawals ain't going to kill me. He said, I knew I'd be all right if I could just make it through it. And so that was that. He got off of it. Now, the honor house, I don't know how I ended up there. Well, I mean, I know how I ended up there because I put in for it. But what I mean is I don't know how I was able to make it because you have to be, I think it's 3 months right up free, something like that, 3 or 4 months right up, without a conduct violation. I can't remember exactly, but me and my cellie, my partner, knew him since the walls. We put in for it, and we didn't think we was going to make it, because it was, like I said, 5 and 6 houses where all the fighting and stuff takes place. And but we made it, and I mean, it was just, we get down to 3 houses and it's just all laid back. There's a lot of people down there that well, they're strange. You know, there's like there's like a lot of old men down there. There's a lot of that's also where they had the dog program, Puppies for Parole. That out of all the programs, this is the one that I one of the ones that few I approve of, because they take these dogs from the shelters and they train them, and they're not everybody in Treehouse has one, but I signed up right before I ended up getting a date. But I seen guys down there, like there was this one guy one time that, I mean, he never smiled. He had just had this blank stare all the time. And one day in the chow hall, he sat down across from me, and I'm thinking, oh wow. And he did not. He's one of those type of people, you know. You see him like sometimes in movies or something. He just looks at you. He doesn't look down at his food. Just takes the thing of the food. This is the way he was. It's kind of unnerving, you know. I'm, like I said, I don't lie, so you know it was a little unnerving to me. But I did not want to get up and move somewhere else, because then he'll think, and everybody else think, well, he's scared, you know. And scared or not, I don't back down, you know. And there's been times I was scared, you know. I'm not gonna lie. But he ends up there. How he ended up there, I don't know either. But he ends up there, and he had a dog. It was a German Shepherd, I remember. And so I was out in front of the housing unit one day, and I see him with his dog, and I see him smiling. I said, this guy never smiles. Well, I'm going to talk to him. You know, I got to see what's going on. So I go over to him. I said, hey, man, what's up? He goes, oh, not much. Wow, he talks too, you know. I said, I couldn't help but notice, messing with your dog, you smiling, you know. I said, I've never seen you smile before. I said, in fact, I never heard you talk before. And he just kind of grinned. He said, yeah, there wasn't nothing to smile about, buddy. He goes, we're all here in this prison, and I really don't see anything to smile about. But he said, I came down here to this honor house to get into the dog program, because I wanted a dog. He goes, I got a dog, training this dog, and the dog makes me happy. This is something that makes me happy. The rest of this stuff doesn't make me happy, this does. I said, well, that's good, you know. And so then, you know, I left, but that just goes to show how this dog program changed people. The last thing I want to talk about is one of the things is I've already talked about, and that was the guy who was in Treehouse with me, and you know, he's in the honor house, and he didn't have a dog or anything, but there was a guy that got moved up from 5 or 6 houses. I don't know what house he came from, but this guy gets looking at him, and he recognizes him. Goes up and asks his name, you know, says, what's your name? And the guy tells him. So he just comes back, and he just lays it, you know, he doesn't do anything. And we didn't really know what was going on for a while. Come to find out, this guy had raped his sister. And what he ends up doing, this guy had a lot of friends. He gets people to get a fight going on down in the 5 and 6 house yard. a bunch of his friends. And I don't know if the fight was legitimate, you know, it's like a bunch of people fighting against others, or if it's just all pretend. But either way, all the guards go running down there, and he stabs this guy up here on the yard of the 3 and 4 house yard. But that was he doesn't kill him or anything, but you know, he can't blame him for what he did. You know, I don't blame him, but I'm sure he got more time out of that. Then the last thing I really want to talk about is when I finally got a date after 6 parole hearings. I finally get a date, and you know what they did with me? The first couple of days, they didn't do anything. First few days, so I'm out in the yard with everybody, you know, and having a good time, and you know, everybody's congratulating me and stuff. But caseworkers had switched. You know, I don't know why, but for some reason they switched. The one we had in 3 house went to 5 house, and 5 house came up there. And it wasn't long I was called into the office, and he goes, "Go pack your stuff." I said, "Why?" He goes, "You're going to the hole." Well, why am I going to the hole? I ain't done anything. He goes, "This is a level 5 prison, and you're a custody level 1. We can't have you on the yard." So they put me in 1 house in a single man cell, and I was there about a month before I got transferred to Algoa. I tried to waive it. I said, "Can I sign something, you know, keep me from..." They said, "No. If your people sues, if something happens to you and your people sue, we will lose, and we're not going through that. We're not taking that chance." So they put me in 1 house, a single man cell, and I was there about a month. I was mad. Even the other guards that was in 1 house came by and they said, "What'd you do?" And I said, "I got my level dropped." They said, "Wow, you're in the hole for getting your level dropped." And but from then on, I went to Algoa, and I don't know if I'm going to do a video on Algoa and Farmington, because I went back to Farmington too. But I mean, there was nothing significant, you know, except that I hated Algoa. You know, I hated the way people act down there. People 1 or 2 years, you know, acting a fool, had no respect, didn't watch where they was going or anything. But I want to thank y'all for watching, and I'm sorry this is so long. I apologize, but that's Lakeland was where I spent 12 years of my 29 years. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.